안녕하세요.
안녕하세요.
네, 안녕하세요. 외국 사람 없는데, 선생님, 우리 영어로 해야 돼. 기록을
가능하시죠? 네, 저 영어로 급하게 타주기.
영어 레퍼런스로 하고 한국말로 그때 되지 않나? 아이들도 외국 사람이 보시면 그래서 영어로 해야 되지만. 시간은
극하시가 되겠는데, 지금. 네.
아니 이게 보고 영어 내 해야 돼? 문자 되니까?
뭐 그렇지 않을 것 같습니다. 선생님 그냥 박별 선생님께서 좋으신다고 하셔도 괜찮을 것 같아요.
저희가 시간이 원래 4시로 알려드렸는데, 그래서 사람들이 안 오시는 것 같아서 하는데, 얼른 사람들 안 오면 시작할까?
네, 안 계실 때 슬쩍 그냥.
아니, 이천 선생님 이런 정도 들어가지고 또 진짜 사실 또 좋은 일이 좀 사실 많지만 허민희 선생님 파리 잘 계세요?
예, 지금 런던에 가 있습니다. 네, 여동생이 런던에 살고 있습니다.
진짜 인터내셔널 하는 student이네, 런던에서. 네. 그러면 오늘 제7차 아시아 경제연구 네트워크 컨퍼런스를 시작하도록 하겠습니다. 분명히 부 선생님이 영어를 안 해도 된다고 해서 그냥 편하게 나가도록 하겠습니다. 오늘 첫 번째 발표로 세 분이 저희 팀에서도 세 발표가 준비되어 있는데 김기훈 선생님의 Unconstitutional Manuscript 아미티치아 교우론의 저본을 새로 발견된 저본을 해주신 것 같고, 두 번째로 손인영 선생님이 명리탐, 그러니까 아리스토텔레스의 카테고리 범주를 분석한 명리탐 and the change in Jesuit translation practice in China in the 16th, 20th, 1920년대 중국에서 기업에서 신부님들 번역 사례 명리탐 중국을 시작하고, 세 번째로는 an example of intertextual analysis differentia and su in 우공, 폴피우스 A사학의 오공을 관한 회화, 한자, 수, 단어에 대해서 발표를 해주시고, 전체적으로 제너럴 디스커션을 하면 4시간이 될 것 같아요. 제가 좀 일찍 시작하는 거라고 아마 발표 한 15분 정도 하시고, 발표하는 건에 따라서 질문을 받고, 전체적으로 토론을 좀 하셨으면 하고 하면 충분하지 않나 이렇게 생각합니다. 그래서 먼저 첫 번째 발표자로 김기훈 박사님을 소개하겠습니다. 김기훈 선생님은 서울대학교 인문학연구소 세학연구소 책임연구원이시고, 국회로 닥터투스 세학원을 하시고, 저희 팀에서는 폴피우스의 A사고객과 학자분은 오공론을 번역하시고 집중하셨습니다. 그래서 근데 지금 저희가 입고 있는 작품이 마테오리치가 번역했다고 하는, 지었다고 하는 교우론 무적에 관하여 텍스트가 있는데, 이 텍스트가 우리가 알고 있기로는 저번에 하나인 줄 알았는데 이 텍스트 자체가 아주 복잡합니다. 그래서 이것에 대해서 간단하게 말씀을 해주실 것 같습니다. 네, 또 사람이 많지 않으니까 큰 박수 몇 번 더, 세 번이 아니라 6번 주세요. 아유, 윤비 선생님 오셨네. 저런 인문단장이 오셨는데 사회단장이 오면 우리 정치에 아무 소리 도움이 안 되는데 어쨌든 서울대학교 얘기하다가 저기다 800구나. 드리겠습니다.
예, 소개 감사합니다.
예.
예, 저 소개받은 김기현이고요. 한국 분들만 계시지만 기왕에 제가 영어로 오늘 새벽부터 나와가지고 완성한 거라서 화면에 자료 띄워놓고 영어로 읽으려고 하겠습니다.
네. Okay. I introduce Kim Gi-yoon, please. You can with one part. Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much, Professor. Let's start by reading my paper. Title is a short introduction to the codices of Matewicz's Gyro-Loon. Matewicz's Gyro-Loon is a well-known work as an early example of Jesuit accommodation in late Ming China. Filled with maxims or precepts on friendship, Gyro-Loon seems to have influenced the Confucian literati since the end of the 16th century in East Asia. It introduced the Western thought on social relationships in China as well as in Korea, where the Christianity and the Xishui already committed. Researches on the reception of Gyro-Loon have showed that this work has deeply impressive to the intellectuals in Joseon Dynasty, particularly of realistic or pragmatic school of Confucianism, Shinhak in Korean. As a result, the sentences or maxims like a friend is another self or a friend is a half of me sound hardly philosophical but familiar to modern Koreans without reminding the names of Aristotle, Cicero, or Matewicz's. Some ideas on the friendship of or from Western civilization have become a part of tradition or has been moderately adjusted since the era of interchanging between Eastern and Western, so that it would be difficult to distinguish absolutely which friendship discourse is proper to East Asian culture or which ideas came from Western learning. But the detailed study on such a reception history shall provide some clues to identify specific aspects. Matewicz's Gyro-Loon could be one of the significant cases. In short, the publishing of Gyro-Loon has three phases. First, Matewicz's own manuscript or draft as the answer to Prince Qian and Wang in Nanchang. Second, the official publication in Beijing. Finally, the incorporated version into Tian Xue Chu Han by Li Jiazhou. However, Tian Xue Chu Han edition, among others, has unusually attracted one-sided attention to the researchers of Koreanology or Korean studies on Xishui. In this short preliminary paper, the textual significance of Gyro-Loon, which has been relatively negative, is to be examined briefly by comparing its title, publication forms of the codices, and editions. First, Codex BL from British Library. It is the first draft as the response to Prince Qian in Nanchang, 1595. It must have been copied within the Society of Chinese Acquaintances till the end of century as Matewicz's letter to Girolamo Costa in the 15th August 1599 alludes. It contains 76 sentences or maxims with a short introduction of Matewicz and with a brief epilogue as colloquial. So this version of Gyro-Loon is edited by modern publishing and having 78 sentence numbers. Most of all, the Codex BL has a handwritten Italian translation of Matewicz, which has been missed for a long time but was discovered in the British Library some decades ago. This manuscript might be enveloped with the letter to Girolamo Costa. Second, Codex B&C, Biblioteca Nazionale Centrale. It is the official published edition in Beijing, 1601 or 1606, including the preface from Jing. It seems to have been published in early days without the permission of Matteo-Ricci, but the publication soon had approval of the Jesuit with a stamp on the end of the book. Before the publishing, Matteo-Ricci submitted the first draft of Jailun, that is the Codex BL, and so this edition has totally 100 sentences, so 24 sentences added by the author, with the introduction and an epilogue. Another codicize, BAD and BNF seem to be almost identical to this BNC codex in terms of Chinese text with a little printing error. Third edition is the incorporated edition in the Tianjue Chukan. Li Jiazhuo edited and published the works of Xizhi as a single collection under the title Tianjue Chukan. Jailun also became a part of it 19 years after the death of Matteo-Ricci, including the prefaces by Feng Yingjing and Chu Taozi. The form of the work was not changed, but the text itself seems to be partly amended by Li Jiazhuo. Interestingly, because of the accessibility of Tianjue Chukan, the most posterity could read Jailun by this edition. And likewise, the Tianjue Chukan has unusual authority on the study of the Xizhi. In any case, it has primarily provided an opportunity to read Jailun to Korean intellectuals ever since 17th centuries.
Excuse me, please.
Thank you. The differences on the title of the work and publication form between the main codicises mentioned above are as following. First of all, the codicises BL and BNC preserve the expression Da Jian and Wang, response to Princess Jian An, but the Tianjue Chukan edition has not any clue for it, although the readers are soon to acknowledge the motive and the purpose of the work and author by reading the introduction of Jailun. The title and the heading written by Matteo-Ricci should be retained as in the original codicises. Next, only the Tianjue Chukan edition has an additional character Jia in the title that Jailun is now generally known to readers. Original title Yolun might be changed into such a shape by the reception in China. The reason why is the problem to solve by detailed study works. Above all, it is important that there are some changes in the text, and it was likely revised by the author himself. So, strictly speaking, the Codex BNC is a kind of criterion of Jailun that one could edit the text with apparatus criticus. Therefore, the critical edition of the textual history of Jailun will be able to distinguish, respectively, the strata of its authority and authenticity. First element, Matteo-Ricci's as it were invention prima locorum de amicitia. Comparison of the Codex BL Chinese text and the Italian translation of the author himself, and review of original 76 sentences. Second, Matteo-Ricci's afterthought on the first draft and the supplement for publishing 1601. Analysis of 24 added sentences and comparison of the revised Chinese text by the author himself with the Codex BL's text. Third, Li Jiazhuo's slight revision, 1629 after Matteo-Ricci's decease. Comparison of the text with the Codex BNC, review of the change of the title and heading the work. In the future, a critical edition of Jailun in Korea shall be significant for the researcher because it will be able to provide the text that is nearer to the original idea and proposal of Matteo-Ricci, the author himself. And by collatio et lectio of the codicises and the editions, one could recover the forgotten or neglected history of Jailun. Recently in Korea, several Korean linguists have brought out academical works on the Jaehyun, but most of them are focused on the reception history in the Joseon dynasty. For example, there are noticeable articles written in Korea as follows. Out of these examples, only Benjamin and William Pierce mentioned on the code sizes, but they did not treat the problem in detail. Cautiously speaking, several scholars are still studying Jaehyun based on the Kenshu Chuhan. Even the Korean translations also have the original text from Kenshu Chuhan. Two translations in Korean as follows. However, one should estimate the history of studying Jaehyun on two academical groundworks in Italy, Pasquale Maria Delia's and Filippo Minini's. Delia's monumental work is newly focused on the source of Jaehyun and will excavate the source of Matteo-Ricci's memory, the Amicizia. So many sentences written by Matteo-Ricci from his memory in Jaehyun are now considered as borrowed from a digest book, Sententia Exemplar by Andreas Abulensis. The author of this source book is Andrea de Resende, and this book seems to have been popular in his days. As Delia shows, Matteo-Ricci's most ideas and precepts might be taken out from Andreas Abulensis' works, and the latter had also comprehended various topics and maxims from the ancient classical authors. So now readers could enjoy and reflect the original thought on friendship of Aristotle, Cicero, and Plutarch, etc. by reading Jaehyun. However, Delia might have not yet Matteo-Ricci's original translation manuscript. Since 19th century, a letter had been considered as his handwriting one, till the Codex BL appeared again in the light of the world, as mentioned above. For a long time, this forged epigraph was thought as the author's, but this matter is corrected in one of the orthography in the Codex BL in order to translate the text into more native Italian and to remove the awkwardness due to Chinese language. So this one is most far from the original idea on friendship, that is from first stage ancient authors and Andreas Abulensis, and then the Chinese text of the BL and Matteo-Ricci's Italian translation of the BL. At last, anonymous correction on Ricci's translation. Minini's edition is the most comprehensive achievement studying Jaehyun. He translated the Codex BLC in Italian and edited Matteo-Ricci's BL edition and its epigraph. In addition, Sophia Mate in this edition provided an enormous source study, including Andreas Abulensis. So now Minini's edition has often been referred to as a standard. Nevertheless, nor it does digitalize the Chinese text, nor contain an apparatus criticus for the text. Therefore, it is not, strictly speaking, a critical edition, but it is still functioning as a foundation for follow-up studies on Jaehyun. The first full-out English translation of Timothy Billings is based on the textual examination as discussed in this short paper. His bilingual edition has a kind of appendix critica instead of apparatus criticus. Billings edited the text based on the Codex BNC with mainly comparing the BL and the Kenshu Chuhan edition. For decades, his work has been a stepping stone to readers and researchers of Matteo-Ricci. My paper also has passed over to put a next small stone of a road of studying Jaehyun. In conclusion, it is time to prepare the renewed Jaeyoon edition, at least in the field of Koreanology or Korean studies on tissue. After the rediscovery of the Codex BL, as discussed above, the history to be written changed. The critical edition Jaeyoon, which could be available by close cross-reading and legend recension, will be necessary not only to review the reception and influence of Matthieu, but also to identify if there are subtle misreadings or misunderstandings for centuries in reading Jaeyoon. Moreover, its standard form, bilingual edition with apparatus criticus and apparatus totium or apparatus similium seems to be better and more worthwhile to readers and researchers for understanding a complicated history of the text Jaeyoon. Then, although it would take some time, once again, the history should be changed. Due to Korea, a kind of borderland nation among civilizations. Finally, at the root of my paper, I would like to appreciate the organizers, especially to Professor Gu Gyo-sung for inviting us in 7th ABLM conference with a famous citation. All's well that ends well. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think this is just beginning. Okay, I hope. Okay, now I think it's better to discuss now because the topics each speakers are different. So, is there any question, comment, or objection, or supplement? Okay, then I raise a hand. Dr. Kim, is there any difference that can be observed between the Korean already published text translated by Sung Young-bae and the original text? I mean the so to say you have tried to provide the various kinds of source. So is there any some kind of the texture difference? Can you give some example on that?
I'm sorry. Now I'm not sure that is there any difference between the text and translation because I got stuck to study Jaeyoon. So your question is our work to be done together in the future. I think so.
I mean, the original text that changed, then translation also should be changed. Independent of Chinese grammatical operation.
I agree with you.
That I would like to ask. Okay. Okay. No question? No commentary? Okay. Okay, then let's go to the second presentation. I would like to introduce Dr. So. Professor, do you want to ask some question? No?
Nothing special. I said nothing special.
Okay.
Thank you.
Then let's begin with the second talk. Dr. So, who is how to say that Kenyan as research fellow, the Greco-Roman classical studies Institute of Greek Studies, and her basic concern is mathematics and Jewish study, or also the history of politics in general, right? Yes. And please, you can enjoy your time and enough time, I think, please. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Professor Han, for the kind introduction. Today my talk is about the militant and the changes in Jesuit translation practice in China in the 1620s. Originally, I planned to talk about translation strategies, but actually the time for the talk is a little bit not. It is not enough to talk about all the strategies. I plan to change my presentation. So today's presentation is I am focusing on explaining the background of the translation of Western philosophy based on the commentaries on Aristotle's work in 1620s, which means that why the Jesuit missionaries decided to translate Aristotle's work and commentaries in Chinese since the 1620s. That is my main subject today. And before my presentation, I want to apologize previously for my really poor pronunciation of Latin and Chinese. There are some Latin words and Chinese vocabularies which were not my thing. So I apologize for that previously. And secondly, until today morning, I thought my presentation would be in Korean. So actually, my presentation is mixed with the Korean and English. So if you don't mind, I will switch my presentation English to Korean to English. I try to do it naturally as possible as I can. Okay, so let's move to let me start my presentation. Okay, this text, as Professor An said introduction, our team has been translating and studied militant for many years. Actually, we translated this text for more than 5 years, I guess. And then when we compare this militant is a translation of Lillibert dialect, which is usually we often call it like Quimbra text, which was a textbook for the student produced in the Quimbra University in Portugal from the end of the 16th century to the early 17th century. And while we compare these two, original one and translated one, and also when we compare these militant with the other translations of Jesuit missionaries, we found that this book is really special. This translation is really special. First of all, there are so many neologisms, unlike the translation before the Mingling, which means that only 16th century until the 1620s, not many missionaries, actually the Jesuit missionaries made a lot of newly coined words, but at the same time, they borrowed a lot of Chinese everyday languages, vocabularies from the everyday languages in Chinese. But in this case, they made so many neologisms which caused Chinese could not understand this text fully, actually. So some scholars who studied Mingli Tan said that the translators who were the Francisco Furtado and Lizard Zhao could not find the right context of this book, and the right Chinese intellectual context, which means that it was not spread at all, and nobody actually, in fact, not many people, very few people, only very few people just were interested in this book. Then we can have a question, then why these two people, the translators, translated this difficult textbook for the university students. It is really big volume, and also Mingtan is also very big volume as well. And they really did all their effort, but the result was not that good. Why? What was their intention? That was our how can I say, the shared question in our team as well. So why they translated, before we asked why they translated this difficult book, we have to know about the translation strategy before this textbook. All right. This is Nicholas Trigger's. Nicholas Trigger's Christiana Expedizione appeared Sinas in the 1650s. This book is basically the Mathematics Journal, translated and edited by Nicholas Trigger, and there is a description why and how Euclid Elements has been translated by Martin Rich and his Chinese collaborator Xu Gangqi, who was a famous scholar bureaucrat and one of the three pillars of Chinese Catholicism. According to Trigger, it was Xu Gangqi, not Martin Rich, who pushed it, that Jesuit and their Chinese collaborators produced not just volumes on the faith and morals, but also European sciences as a foundation for mission. Xu Gangqi thought that it was necessary to prove that the knowledge of Jesuit missionaries was beneficial for Chinese. The text Chinese enjoyed the most was Zhao Yulun, that Dr. Kim Gi-hun already gave us a talk about, and also the Jihou Mianben was a very famous popular text for the Chinese. Jihou Mianben was a translation of the first 6 books of Christoph Clavius' edition of Euclid's Elementorum, Degree 15, which was published in 1591. In the beginning, Xu Gangqi was not a collaborator who helped Rich with the translation. But Rich was not satisfied with the work with the other collaborators, so then asked Xu Gangqi to translate the text together. As Xu Gangqi studied elements for many hours a day, taking lessons from which, making so rapid progress that he worked out the exquisite Chinese characters all he had learned. Richen and Shigamji finally were able to publish an edition of first 6 books of the elements in the clear and elegant Chinese style. After praising Shigamji's learning capability, Trigo added this sentence on the Chinese language. Here too, it may be noted that the Chinese language is in no wise deficient in idiom or in vocabulary for proper expression of all of our scientific terminology. Well, this might be the praise, but actually when I read the sentences, I have questions. What did Trigger mean when he said they could find the praise and vocabulary in Chinese to represent all of the European scientific terminologies correctly? Is it due to the availability of Chinese mathematical and scientific language that Western mathematics and science have been totally translated into Chinese? Does it imply that because Chinese is a flexible language, it is simple to translate mathematics and science while coining new terms? Does it indicate that Chinese is deficient in terms of language for philosophy and theology, but not for science? Actually, maybe if Trigo listened to my question, he thought that I'm too mean. But this question, still arising in my mind. Trigo may have been expressing admiration for the Chinese language when he said this. Trigo's object may have been to emphasize the Chinese language's capacity for translating complicated studies. Alternatively, he may try to draw attention to the success of the Jesuit missionaries in China who employ the translation of mathematics and science as a means of mission. However, given the length of disputes regarding the translation that took place within the Chinese Jesuit community, as well as the inconsistent nature of translations, it is reasonable to assume that it would have been difficult to translate European studies into Chinese at the time. And we have to understand, even actually if you go back to the Jiho Wenben's translation is good and bad. Good because Chinese could understand and calculate they could learn the calculation with the Jiho Wenben, and it is also very bad because Matovich and Shigamji borrowed too many Chinese existing terms, and they borrow these terms which confuse Chinese, as if the Jiho Wenben is one of their Chinese texts, which means that they could not distinguish Jiho Wenben from their they could not understand the intention of the translation, especially the methodology or reasoning method, but they only focus on the calculation. So we have to understand why Matovich chose to borrow the existing Chinese language. This is because of the adaptation. Adaptation is the strategy of Jesuit mission. If you see this picture, this is the Jesuit in Latin America. And if you see this picture, this is Adam Chao, who went to China, what we can see is that Jesuit, in terms of Jesuit adaptationist strategy, they should be, if they go to a certain country and society, they have to be part of the country and the society, which means that they do not wear the priest costume, but they change their priest costume into the traditional costumes like this and this. So, and also they have to learn. They did not insist that they have to only use the Latin language, but they learned how can I say? If someone is someone went to China, they should be they should learn Chinese language, and if they go to Latin America, they have to learn costume and the culture, the language as well. So there are so many in Asia, adaptationist strategies is widely accepted. So Ricci is Michael Usery and Matterich were they were the experts because they knew Chinese very well, and they can use Chinese. They could use Chinese as well as Chinese, as if they were Chinese. Okay, so so if we look at the Matterich and his adaptationist practice, he said like this. He changed their lifestyle and their culture as well. 저희는 이곳에서 중국의 옷을 입고 신발을 신고 중국의 집에서 생활하며 중국의 가치를 받지 않는 것들을 말하지도 먹지도 마시지도 않고 있습니다. 중국인은 다른 지역의 사람들과 매우 다릅니다. 중국인은 전쟁에 대해서는 잘 모르지만 학문에 대해서 잘 알고 있고 외국인들을 매우 경계합니다. 그들은 무척 영리하기 때문에 현재 자기네 종교와 미신에 대해서 많은 의문을 가지고 있습니다. 이렇게 되면 예상한 대로 우리 멀지 않은 시간에 많은 사람들을 개종시킬 수 있을 것입니다. And also he learned Chinese, and as we saw before, they use science. They translated a lot of science book and practical science book, and also mathematics as well. And also they emphasized reason. And also they accepted many classics, many Chinese classics and the old Confucianism. They criticized Confucianism, but they accepted the Confucianism in all days. So what is their strategy was that they they employed a lot of Chinese classics, and they employed a lot of sentences from the Chinese classics and used those sentences to explain the Christianity as a metaphor. This is the list of Matterich's work and works of Savantino de Orsis. Savantino de Orsis is actually he was the next generation of Matterich. And if you see the list of their translation or their writings, it is very difficult to find the catechism or theology book in their translation and work. In Matterich's work, only these three are leading to the theology. The other things, of course, there are Zhao Yunlun. It is more like how can I say? This is not a catechism or a science. It's more like a maxim, the collection of maxims. But the other things these are all related to music or science, mathematics, and so on. And in terms of the works of Sabatino de Ursus never wrote any catechism. He only wrote the medicine, or this is what can I say? They are all related to science as well, which means that before the 1620s, Jesuits really focused on the translation of science and mathematics to how can I say, draw the attention of Chinese literatures. But it does not mean that they forgot. It doesn't mean that they forgot their teaching, the necessity of philosophy and theology. Actually, if we look at all the introduction of their works, even though their work themselves were science, about the science and mathematics, they always, in the introduction, they inserted theological nuanced sentences, or they explained them why we study mathematics or science. It's because we should understand philosophy or theology to get the true knowledge. So this is the introduction to the Jihawomen of Maturity. So here, what he emphasizes that gaining the knowledge is very important, but what is more important is that the methodology, which means that he actually criticized the Neo-Confucian style or Chinese style of methodology of gaining knowledge, because it is only make people have an opinion, not the knowledge. So what Rich emphasizes here is that to extend knowledge is to infer the hidden and subtle principles, not by personal views, but by application of reason, which is to induce an abstract principle from a thing which is known. With reason, we can investigate the principles of things, find axioms, and finally get knowledges. Until we grasp the undoubted knowledge, we must continue to question and refute in order to ascertain whether our inference is valid. The quotation here is significant because Rich adapted Neo-Confucian philosophical concepts and the premise into Jesuit philosophical version. No doubt, the terms that he used here, such as Li, Dao, investigation of things, Zhuzhi, extension of knowledge, and Chongli, the phantoming of Li, were well-known Neo-Confucian vocabulary. Li is a core concept of Neo-Confucian philosophy and another name of Taiji. It is understood as a pattern, rational principle, law, or described as an impersonal God. Other concepts were discovered in the Daxue, the Great Learning, and they were regarded as procedures for achieving unquestionable knowledge. In his introduction, Rich criticized the Chinese intellectuals' ignorance of proper method by expanding the meaning of the Neo-Confucian core concept. He substituted Uli for Li in order to undermine the central Neo-Confucian idea of Li and reinterpret it as a principle of a thing, ensuring that the Chinese literature did not confuse God with Li. By doing so, Rich could argue that the knowledge gained through the investigating things and phantoming Li was the principle of things, neither pattern of the world nor the knowledge about Taiji. Investigating things, extending knowledge, and phantoming Li frontally challenged their Confucian premise and revealed the two philosophical goals of geometry. First, to introduce the geometry as an educational tool for philosophical inference. Second, to clarify that undoubtedly knowledge was not through the personal opinion, but inference by proper method taught in European schools. As a result, he maintained that the neo-Confucian method of learning was flawed due to the fact that the literature did not reason, but created their opinion. In Japanese education, especially actually the why Ricci, even though Ricci did not translate the philosophical book or theology that much, why he wanted to share this idea with the Chinese is that actually in Jesuit education, especially in 16th and the 17th centuries, mathematics were crucial in the pursuit of philosophical and theological goals. Ignatius Loyola insisted that the mathematics should be taught as well as logic, physics, metaphysics, and moral science in Jesuit education. The natural sciences, including mathematics, were regarded as a subject that disposed of the intellectual powers for theology and was useful for the perfect understanding and use of it. This is Lacio's studium. Lacio's studium is, the English translation of Lacio studium is an official plan for the Jesuit education. It is a document that standardized the globally influential system of Jesuit education in 1599. It was a collection of regulations for school officers and teachers, and Lacio's studium relied on classic subjects like theology, philosophy, Latin, and Greek, and did not contain any provisions of elementary education. So, the end of the 19th century and early 16th century, in the Jesuit society, they shared the common idea that, if there was a logic and methodology, and the methodology basically is, of course, it is philosophy to understand God. So even though materialists did not translate any philosophical book, of course, the 천주시리 was actually the function is like that, but it is not enough. But anyway, he also shared this idea as well, but he did not translate any of them. And along with the Lacio studium, the Coimbra University in Portugal, they published the commentaries Colegi Presences. So you can see these 8 commentaries. They published this Coimbra text since 1592, and the dialectica our team have been dealing with was the final book of this series. And not only the European context, if we think about the main context, the methodology of philosophy was written. Actually, at the time, many Chinese literati criticized the old style, traditional style of the methodology of philosophy. This is the Hangzhou publisher Hu and Fran's encyclopedia. He was a very famous publisher in Hangzhou, and he published many books. And this 격치통서, 거주총슈, is one of the famous encyclopedia printed in Ming Dynasty. And you can see Urdu is related to the term related to the philosophy and methodology. But if we see all the list of this encyclopedia, not only philosophy, but he added the etymology, cosmology, topography, geography, laws, pharmacy, geology, botany, many things. Actually, he collected these all the different type of knowledge together under the name of 격지통섭, which means that he actually criticized the Confucian methods of investigating things and extending the knowledge, which is very vague. He thought that it's very vague. What is investigating things? What is extending the knowledge? If you think about the 양명学or 심리学, 성리학 or 양명학, it's very difficult to find what is the exact methodology to gaining the knowledge. So these publishers who published the encyclopedia in Ming Dynasty, actually they had a question about the methodology, which means that in Chinese society, the way or methodology of Neo-Confucianism or Confucianism were criticized deeply. So it is the context. It can be context of the why the logic books in European countries translated into China in 1620s. Then, what makes the 1620s text translation different? First of all, Matthieu had passed in 1610, which means that the next person who took in charge of a Chinese mission was Longobardo. Niccolo Longobardo had a different idea of translation from the Matthieu, which means that Matthieu's adaptationist strategy was criticized by the Jesuits in China at the time. And 1660 to 1617, there was a Nanjing Church incident, which is a persecution, kind of persecution. And after the Nanjing Church incident, the publication of Western learning was suspended until like 1620s. Nicolas Trigo, actually he did not experience the Nanjing Church incident because he went to Europe to petition the Pope to recruit the new missionaries and to raise funds for the Chinese mission. And it was 1613 to 1619s. And he brought new books, new missionaries, and in the book, there were a translation of Aristotelian works based on Honeycrisp census. Okay, so if we see the Herbert coherence of the catalog of Catholic Library of Baytown, maybe Nicolas Trigo imported 3 editions of commentary of Nicomachean Ethics and 2 editions of commentary on De Anima, 2 editions of commentary on the Parva Naturalia, 2 editions of commentary on the Decalogue, 2 editions of commentary on the De Meteorologica, and 2 editions of commentary on De Generatione and Corruptione, and 2 editions of commentary on the De Physica, and 1 edition of commentary on the Dialectica. This is Yang Tingyun's introduction of Shishaphan. Shishaphan is the introduction to the Western University and its curriculum. And if you see that there is more than 3,000 books were imported by Trigo. And this is also Elizabeth also mentioned about the books. Trigo imported more than 3,000 books when he came back to China in 1619. And the new missionaries means new translators. This is Tehran's catalog of Catholic Library of Beitang, and you can see all the list of the Jesuit, the Aristotelian works, Jesuit Aristotelian books, which are owned by Chinese Jesuits. And after all the 16th century, the Aristotelian books were kept importing. So you can see different version of Aristotelian books here. And then in 1620s, so after Trigo brought more than 7,000 books, the Jesuits started translating the Aristotelian philosophy. And this is the 9 works of Aristotelian philosophy. And you can see that this is the Chinese title, and this book is corresponding this Aristotelian work. And actually, except Ming Tan, the other books, the other works, were not exactly the translation of original text. It was kind of mixed, and how can I say? They just made a, how can I say, book by themselves, not translate wholly. But Ming Tan is different because Ming Tan is, even though there are some different translations, or they sometimes omitted two sentences, sometimes they made sentences, but basically Ming Tan is very good translation of the Quicker text.
Excuse me.
네, 너무 길어서 여기서 그러면 대충 말씀을 드리겠습니다. 네, 그래서 이제 제가 말씀을 드리려고 했었던 것은 왜 아리스토텔레스 작업이 번역이 됐는가, 이렇게 많이 번역이 됐는가, 그것은 애초에 처음에 마테오리치 같은 1세대 선교사들이 중국인들의 관심을 끌기 위해서 번역을 했었던 것과 달리 1620년대가 되면 책들이 굉장히 많이 수입이 됐고, 본격적인 신학과 철학을 중국에 번역할 수 있는 어떤 기반이 마련되었고, 그다음에 남경도안에서 천주교가 뭘로 굉장히 많이 비판을 받았냐면 불교의 악유라는 비판을 굉장히 많이 받았습니다. 불교와 다르다는 걸 증명하기 위해서라도 이 사람들은 서양 철학을 굉장히 많이 번역할 수밖에 없었던 그런 부분들이 있었던 거죠. 그래서 이런 번역이 나오게 되었고, 프루타도가 기존의 다른 번역자들하고 달랐었던 이유는 프루타도는 포르투갈 출신이었기 때문에 프리미어 텍스트를 다른 사람들보다 훨씬 더 잘 알고 있었습니다. 그렇기 때문에 다른 사람들이 짜집기식으로 번역하는 거랑은 다르게 굉장히 이제 전적인 번역을 할 수 있었던 거라고 얘기를 할 수 있습니다. 문제의식 자체는 신학과 철학을 번역해야 되겠다는 문제의식 자체는 마테오리치 때부터 있었지만, 그것을 본격적인 여러 가지 측면에서의 컨텍스트가 만들어졌었던 것은 1920년대부터였다라는 것을 말씀드리면서 오늘 발표는 여기서 끝내도록 하겠습니다. 네, 감사합니다.
Thank you very much. Is there any question and comment? Or Vivienda experimenta? Okay, David. 아리스토텔레스 한국말로 될 것 같아요.
네.
질문 주기 편할 것 같아요. 제주도는 영어로 정확한 달도 안 될 것 같고, 이제 아리스토텔레스의 텍스트, 철학 텍스트들이 1620년 이 시기에 중국으로 번역된 이유가 뭐냐라고 하는 포인트인데, 불교의 영향을 받아서 불교와 연결된다, 이걸 제기하시죠. 뭐 가능성은 답이라고 해요. 주장이라고 보는데 전건이 있나요?
일단은 그 남경교환 이후에 나왔었던 게 뭐 이제 그 천주교를 비판하는 이제 비판 책들이 있습니다. 중국의 책들이 그런 책들이 있고요. 그 다음에 양정균이라고 하는 양정균이 이제 처음으로 컨버트된 사람 중에 한 명이거든요. 서광계나 이지조처럼 양정균도 굉장히 유명한 그 당시에 카톨릭 신자였었는데. 이 사람이 남경교환이 끝나자마자, 그러니까 남경교환이 17년에 끝나고 1620년, 21년에 대이편, 대이소편이라고 하는 책을 씁니다. 그래서 천주교가 어떻게 불교랑 다르고 어떻게 우리에게 도움이 되는 그런 책인가, 그런 종교인가에 대해서 논중하는 그런 책들도 있고요. 네.
그러니까
네.
천주교가 불교와 다른 것을 저스티파이하거나 아니면 또 디퍼렌시하는 과정에 굳이 니코마코스나 아리스토텔레스 그 범주론이나 인플리티키아 필요했냐, 웨이가 필요했냐, 그것에 대한 생각이 있냐, 이게 한 포인트일 것 같아요.
그러니까 이게 당연히 불교 때문에 그렇게 됐다라고 하는 건 전혀 아니고요. 그건 아니고 그것도 하나의 원인이다. 그러니까 천주교를 그 당시에 유학자들이 천주교의 글들을 읽었을 때 느낌은 불교의 아니라는 비판을 진짜 많이 들었었고, 그 다음에 두 번째로 이제 비판을 받았던 것 중에 하나가 이제 얘네들은 강상윤리가 없다라고 하는 비판을 굉장히 많이 받았습니다. 그래서 천주시리 같은 거를 봐도 그렇고 거기서 마테오 리치나 이런 사람들이 계속 얘기를 하는 게 우리는 군주에게 충성하고 부모를 사랑하고 이런 얘기를 반드시 집어넣거든요. 부분에다가. 그러니까 니코마코스 윤리학이나 우정론도 사실은 되게 그런 거라고 생각을 하는데 자기들이 어떤 기본적인 현세의 인간관계라고 하는 거와에 무관한 그런 작업을 하는 사람들은 아니다. 그런 걸 주장하는 사람들은 아니다. 그냥 불교는 기본적으로 유학자들한테 있어서 불교가 어떤 이미지냐면 현세의 모든 인연의 끈을 다 끊는 것이 이 사람들의 어떤 그 수련의 목적이라고 생각을 하는 것 같았거든요.
그것도 있을 것 같지만 이게 이제 좀 중기쯤 예술의 중교에서 활동하는 사람들 중기쯤으로 넘어가면 이 사람들이 이제 유학을 보는 시각이 이제 심리학하고 원심리학하고 이제 구별하면서 고대 유학하고 구별하면서 우리 카톨릭이 유학하고는 같이 갈 수 없는 그 부분에 아리스토텔레스의 철학이나 범주론이나 이런 것들이 이제 신을 위해서는 중세를 위해서는 필요한 부분이 있을 것 같은데, 1920년대라서 좀 그렇고, 제가 하나 좀 제안을 드리고 싶은 거는 사실은 우리는 중국에서 하는 그 예술 신부들의 작업들을 중국적 맥락, 그러니까 중국 사람 뭐가 필요했고 무엇을 위해서 어코모데이션 해야 되는 그 맥락도 있지만 사실은 반대 유럽에서 진행되었던 논쟁과 같은 맥락으로 같이 일러왔다. 그러면서도 중국 쪽에서 있는 논쟁도 작업하면서도 보내주면서 시작되는, 그러니까 그 인텔렉주얼, 그러니까 지성사 측면에서 이 유럽적, 서양적 맥락하고 같이 가는 대목들로 그 시절에 우리는 또 그 책이 재밌게 쓸 때 같이 오고 또 이런 측면도 굉장히 강하다. 책 하나가 출판될 때는 이럴 수도 쉽지는 않고, 그래서 우리가 좀 논주고 있는 문 중에 하나가 사실은 당시 그 16세기, 17세기 유럽의 지성 내에서 어떤 것이 움직이는지 그걸 같이 봐야 되는 거 아니냐. 내가 왜 이 말씀드리냐면 무시스는 그렇지 않고 전부 당시 가장 유럽에서 중요했던 그 생활과학 책들이에요. 해서수법.
맞습니다. 네, 맞습니다.
지정학들이 같이 오는 대목들이 있기 때문에 같은 지정학적 맥락에서 볼 때 그리고 그 부분은 중국적 맥락으로만 해석할 수가 없고 그 유럽 쪽과 같이 비교해 봐서 파란하게 볼 때 이게 좀 잡히는 거 아니냐. 마찬가지로 유클리드 기하드나 범주르나 이것도 그 시절에 유럽에서 아주 핫한 이슈 중에 하나였다. 그 부분이 좀 체크돼서 얘기하면 우리예부가 단순히 중국 쪽 그건 아니어도 그런 부분이 있지 않겠냐. 그 생각으로 다른 분들 질문 안 하셔서 그냥 좀 선생님도 우려시하시라고 그렇게 질문해요.
네, 감사합니다.
그러면 is there any question and comment? Then we go to next speaker. Doctor, are you ready? Okay. If allowed, you can but please, Doctor is also our research fellow about your institute and like this you see in the screen. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Han, for your kind presentation. So, as we don't have a lot of time, I will start the presentation right away. I think I will share my screen instead of my PPT because
Doctor, please speak a little bit loud.
okay.
For the audience, yes.
Okay, is it better?
Yeah, better.
Okay. Wait. I have a problem with my PPT. I cannot turn the page. Please just a few seconds. Okay, so the edition of the Izagoge and the categories published by the University of Coimbra in 1606 entered into the history of philosophy because it had been the first Western logical treatise to be translated into Chinese at the beginning of the 17th century. In addition to those two treatises, this edition also contains a series of introductions which deal with the origin of philosophy, the definitions of philosophy, and also a lot of presentation about Western art and the usage of logic. It is also a remarkable source of ancient commentaries as it takes into account Greek and Latin exegetical traditions. So, when Francisco Furtado and Li Zizao, the Portuguese and Chinese scholars, tried to translate this text, they had to render not only the logical treatises such as Porphyry's Isagoge and Aristotle's categories, but also the ancient commentaries, which were often very difficult to understand even for European readers. In this short presentation, I will try to show how they deal with the exegetical materials at their disposal by focusing on the notion of difference developed by Porphyry in his Isagoge. This presentation will show how the translators of the 17th century proceeded to translate some technical concepts when the original Latin text did not fully explain them. So first of all, let's see how the chapter on the notion of difference looks like. So we can see that the chapter begins with a brief summary, and the main text of Isagoge is surrounded by commentaries, which are often based on some Greek medieval commentaries. We have those of Porphyrius, Albertus Magnus, Boethius, Avicenna, and Caetanus. On the right, you can see the names of these commentators, which are often quoted in the margin of the page. So unfortunately, when these philosophers are quoted, the exact bibliographic reference is almost never given by the editor. So it is very difficult for the modern readers to check the source. For example, when opinion of a philosopher like Avicenna is quoted, as you can see, a student cannot know which book the commentary came from. Only the professors who used the Coimbra commentary as a textbook in the 17th century and who knew the reference works almost by heart could have helped the students find the exact passage. The situation becomes worse when Coimbra commentary merely mentions the opinion of ancient philosophers without explaining the key concepts. However, students who had the chance to study at the University of Coimbra could have taken advantage of the oral explanation given by the teacher. So we encounter a similar case in the chapter devoted to differentia in the Coimbra commentary. In the Latin commentaries surrounding the Isagoge itself, the editor of the Coimbra gives summaries of Caetanus' explanation of differentia without indicating the exact source. So, but before going further, I will briefly explain the concept of differentia as it is understood originally by Porphyry in his Isagoge. To take the example of man, the rationality is a difference that separates man from horse, but the same difference of rationality is a constitutive element of man because it belongs to its definition. But when it comes to defining whether the genus animal contains the rationality or irrationality, it raises a serious difficulty because a genus like animal in itself cannot be rational nor irrational. Indeed, the animal cannot possess the rationality and irrationality in itself, of course. Otherwise, it would contain two opposite differences at the same time, which is impossible. I mean, the animal cannot be rational and irrational at the same time. But on the other hand, if it possesses no difference at all, that would signify that the species would get their differences from nowhere, which is also impossible. So we have here aporia. The solution given by Porphyry is to say that the genus possesses the difference potentially and not actually. The animal is rational and irrational potentially, while the species possess them actually. The man is rational when we say that the man is rational actually. So, as we mentioned before, Coimbra commentary reports a very interesting explanation of Caetanus concerning this aporia. But you will see this text is very difficult to understand. So what does the text say? It says, Caetanus correctly explained this by saying the genus cannot possess them in an inclusive manner. They are modern inclusionists. which means by including them in its essence. But in a conjunctive manner, that modern conjunctionist, it is not inappropriate that a same thing in species or in genus possesses the opposite items at the same time. So the problem of this kind of summary is that it gives, as you can see, no definition of key concepts like in a conjunctive manner or in an inclusive manner. Only the Jesuit teachers who read Caetana's commentary on Isagoge would have been able to deliver further oral explanation to his students. For modern readers like us, who do not have access to this kind of oral teaching, we have to consult Caetana's commentary to understand all the stages of his argumentation. So, of course, it's relatively easy for modern scholars to reconstruct Caetana's argumentation by consulting the critical edition of his commentary on Isagoge, which had been published in 1934. I found this very rare edition 4 days ago in a national library in Paris. So, but students, European students who lived in the 17th century could also have access to Caetana's commentary on Isagoge. But what was the situation for Chinese scholars? Did Chinese translators have in hand this commentary in order to understand and complete the Coimbra explanation? In order to answer this question, we can try either to check the material testimony at our disposal, like the catalog of books stored by the Jesuits at that time. This book had been mentioned by Dr. So. Or we can also try to analyze the Chinese translation and commentary and see if there are any exegetical elements taken from Caetana's commentary itself. So, but the catalog of Caetana's library, which is the catalog of books brought and stored by the European Jesuits in China from 1583 to 1773, this book does not mention Caetanus. None of his books is listed, actually. So, but we can say that this catalog is, of course, not complete. It does not list all the books that were bought and kept by the Jesuits. However, the explanation given by the Chinese translators could contain elements that could help us to know if they were in possession of Caetana's commentary on Isagoge. But before reading the Chinese commentary, let's see how Caetanus tried to solve the aporia or the differentia. In this commentary on Isagoge, Caetanus used 3 notions in order to explain how the genus can or cannot include the differences in it. So he gives per modum inclusionis, which means in an inclusive manner. Second one is the per modum conjunctionis, which means in a conjunctive manner. And he gives also a third meaning, which is metaphysical meaning of power. Among those 3 concepts, the last one was absent in Coimbra commentary. So how Caethanus explains each of those concepts? Let's see the first one. He said that for things that are one by genus or species, So, for example, a horse and a man, we can say that both of them are one in terms of genus or species. It is possible that these kinds of opposite qualities exist actually and at the same time. That is why animal can also receive rational and irrational at the same time and actually. Although these opposite qualities do not enter into its essence. For example, the man is white or black at the same time through a Belgian or Ethiopian, and the animal is rational and irrational through another beast. As for the explanation of in an inclusive manner, we can summarize by saying that that it is impossible that something, whatever it is, includes two opposite items in its essence or its definition actually and at the same time. For example, the rationality and the irrationality cannot exist actually and at the same time in man's nature, nor white and black can exist in an individual man actually and at the same time. We don't need to go deep into details, but the third one is important. So, Caetaneous adds also a metaphysical concept of power that allows the genus to contain the opposite differences. He says, so he uses here metaphysical speculation, and he continues by saying they have been left undiscussed. It is sufficient to know for the moment that the genus is said to contain differences potentially, for the reason that the differences are born from the genus. That's why the genus is principle of species. So, now what is interesting to mention is that the metaphysical meaning of power is only attested in Chinese commentary. So what does it mean? So you can see he uses here, you can see that he uses the expression 정지 초의 that I translated into metaphysical sense of genus. So that means the Chinese translators had in their hands the complete Caetaneous commentary on Isagoge, and they tried to use it when they found difficulties to understand the Coimbra commentary. So using a table, let us simply compare the corresponding terms in the Latin and the Chinese text. So we have above, Caetaneous, the genus cannot include the opposite differences actually and at the same time can inclusionism. Chinese text says, when we say that the genus itself cannot manifest and subordinate the opposite items, it means that it cannot do it within its essence. So here we have a Onwonji ne. This kind of expression cannot be understood without the help of the Caetaneous commentary on Isagoge. The second one concerns the Permotum conjunctionis. Caetaneous says the genus can include the opposite differences actually and at the same time Permotum conjunctionis. The Chinese text says it manifests and includes opposite items only if the genus is set in conjunction with. So, to the nature that are subordinate. The third one is about the metaphysical sense of power. Caetaneous says the genus can include opposite differences. I forgot to translate some words, but therefore we say in the metaphysical sense of genus that it can include all the differences. So here is my conclusion. the concept of differential translate in So by Chinese in Wukong cannot be understood without a peculiar concept of potency and art defined by tenets. But although this very refined distinction has been well rendered in Chinese, it is almost impossible for Chinese readers to understand anything about this subtlety without the help of a teacher or without additional explanations. Furtado and Li Zizao used not only the Coimbra Latin commentary but also the original sources of the commentaries quoted in it. Some of those bibliographical sources are not listed in the catalog of Peyton Library and can be only identified through a philological analysis. However, this kind of inquiry is not easy to conduct because the exact references are rarely given in the Coimbra Latin commentary. The exact evaluation of Chinese translation requires that we should also take into account the enormous amount of the secondary literature Furtado and Li Zizao referred to. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you very much. And it's very interesting. And is there any comment and question? Okay, simple question. Is there any, in addition to this, is there anything more like that? So the already discussed the things I included in Chinese version.
Of course, I haven't read the entire commentary, but I noticed that many times Chaitanya is mentioned by the commentators. Yeah, and it seems to me that this theologian was very important to Sheffield's teachers. They are used to quoting him as an authoritative figure, and yes, we should pay more attention to this commentator. But yeah, that's all that I can say for the time.
Okay, is anyone? Dr. Do you have any question, any comment? Oh. So, as planned, we have to close our session. Professor Hu?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, it's okay to close our session?
Yes, I think it's okay to close the session. Thank you very much for the practice, and especially to all the presenting. Thank you very much. Yeah, my internet connection is not good, not very good now, so I'm so sorry. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because you're busy now, and we can discuss the things further and continuously. And I think we gave in these sessions, I've given 3 speeches and talks. And first about the prologue and text of Jailun, Gyoro, and the second is the translations issue third is the more concrete, the more detailed issue, the text which were not observed in Quran, but now in Chinese text. What is this? What does mean this? Like that. So we talk about this and okay. Thank you very much for everyone here, and Seoul is now very strongly raining now. Please take care and please enjoy your sunny day in London, and we'll see later.
The weather is very nice. Yeah.